All right, good morning everyone and welcome to the 12th installment of our Acadiana Business Resource Webinar Series. My name is Andre Bro and I work on the team at One Acadiana. And our Acadiana Business Resource Webinars are brought to you by business resource partners from across the Acadiana region, including One Acadiana, LEDA, Opportunity Machine, the Downtown Development Authority, the Louisiana Small Business Development Center at UL Lafayette, Acadiana Workforce Solutions, the United Way of Acadiana, and other local chambers and economic development offices from around the Acadiana region. We have come together to support Acadiana's business community, particularly our small businesses, in response to COVID-19 by hosting a series of webinars on timely and relevant topics. Today's webinar, the 12th in the series, will focus on the Louisiana Main Street Recovery Program with State Treasurer John Schroder. After the Treasurer's presentation, we will use the remaining time for Q&A. As you have questions, please submit them through the Q&A box. We will be monitoring the questions as we go. If we do not have time to get to all of the questions during today's webinar, we will provide contact information for you to follow up with us afterwards. I now have the honor of introducing our distinguished presenter, Louisiana State Treasurer John Schroder. Treasurer Schroder was first elected Louisiana State Treasurer in 2017 and then re-elected to a 4-year term in 2019. As a businessman and entrepreneur, Treasurer Schroder believes government should manage its money like you manage your businesses and households. Since taking office, he has returned more unclaimed property checks than ever before and saved the state millions of dollars by renegotiating contracts and forcing departments to restructure their borrowing habits. Treasurer Schroder also has a key role in supporting the state's economic recovery from COVID-19, as the legislature has appointed the Treasurer's Office to oversee the new Louisiana Main Street Recovery Program, which will provide small businesses with grants of up to $15,000. For today's webinar, Treasurer Schroder will share the latest and greatest information about the program and how small businesses can apply for the grants starting later this month. Following the presentation, as I mentioned, we will have time for Q&A. So as a reminder, please do submit questions through the Q&A box. Without further ado, at this point, I'll hand it off to Treasurer John Schroder. Treasurer Schroder, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning. Looks like there's a lot of people online today. Andre, I appreciate the opportunity, and we're really excited at Treasury to sort of do our part to help the economy. Look, I'm a small business guy, and I own a real estate company. My wife's a residential contractor. We have some retail business, a lot of rental properties, and I've been in and out of all kind of different businesses as an adult. So it's exciting to be able to be part of something that can help small business. And I say this all the time. We spend a lot of time at the Capitol talking about government, how to help government through this crisis, this pandemic, when there's a lack of funding and blah, 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 blah. But there's never enough discussion on how do we help business through this? Because as I tell people, without business, government can't survive. 53% of our population or 53% of the employees work for small business. So it's a very important program. I give a lot of credit to the legislature for standing up and going after this program because it wasn't popular. Government, local government lobbied against it. The governor wasn't real keen on it. But at the end of the day, they passed it. The governor signed it, and it's in the Department of Treasury to run. So I'm excited about that opportunity. So Andre, thanks again for organizing the Main Street program. Y'all are seeing the first group to see our new logo. This came out yesterday afternoon. So it's called the Main Street Recovery Grant Program. And I want to make sure to, and we're going to have some communication issues on what exactly this program is. It says it's a grant program, and it is a grant in the sense that the money, if you qualify and you get money, it's a grant. You won't have to pay it back. But it is a reimbursement program. And it's a COVID-19 expense program, meaning that you've had to incur some expenses due to the COVID, and then you have to apply and be reimbursed for that. It's no different than what the federal programs that a lot of you have probably participated in thus far. The difference is this is a grant from Louisiana. You can't necessarily double dip. It has to be expenses that you haven't been reimbursed before on any of the federal programs. So look, as a business owner, I understand, you invest your blood, sweat, and tears into your business, and you shouldn't have to see your whole in life, your whole personal savings disappear over in this situation when basically government has forced you to shut down. There's over 457,000 businesses, small businesses across Louisiana, and only about 70,000 we're estimating receive some aid from the federal government. And we know that businesses have exhausted their existing financial relief, and so this this comes at a great time. As I've said numerous times, this is a Band-Aid, but some aid is better than no aid. This program has some priorities set by the legislature that I'll go over, and certainly we'll get to a point where we answer some questions later. But this program should kick off by July 28th. In the first 21 days of the program, grants will be given to businesses who didn't receive insurance payments or any federal aid. And that it dedicates the first 21 days for those businesses. And after that, then it's open up to anybody, whether you received aid or not. There's $40 million set aside for businesses owned by women, minorities, and veterans in the first 60 days. So in that 60-day period, there's $40 million that will be utilized for minority type businesses. Eligibility, businesses need to meet a few requirements that are in the law. The full list is posted on our website at www.latreasury.com. But here's just a few. You had to have been domiciled in Louisiana as of March 1, 2020. You had to suffer an interruption of business, at least 50% of the business owned. You must be a Louisiana resident. You had to have filed your taxes either in 2018 or 2019, or you will file taxes in 2020. This is, I said earlier, geared towards small business, so you can't have more than 50 full-time employees. You have to have what they're calling a brick and mortar location, where customers, employees visit your physical location, and that could be your home. And we get a lot of questions about that. And you can't be part of a bigger business, so at no point can the business have more than 50 full-time workers. We get a lot of questions on expenses, and Andre, I know there's a slide for that as well. And these are if you've received any aid at all, you'll recognize this list, because this is the same list. It comes right out of the CARES Act law. Costs related to meeting public health requirements tied to COVID-19, such as creating social distancing, cleaning, disinfecting, purchasing equipment to protect employees or customers, things like hand sanitizers and gloves and masks, anything that you had to do to protect yourself, your customers, or your employees. It could be credit card readers, computers, laptops, printers, scanners, anything necessary to help you reopen your business, tents and outdoor tables. Could have been signage, installation of drive-through windows. There's business interruption costs related to COVID-19 that include unemployment insurance, um, sick leave, inventory replacement, labor costs. Uh, and here's a big one that a lot of people don't realize is your rent and your mortgage interest and your payroll and utilities. So these are just some, this is all comes out of the CARES Act law. So one of the questions we get a lot, this is federal money, this is all CARES Act money, so we basically are following the same law, which means you can't double dip. So the example that I use, if you had $50,000 worth of expenses and you receive $25,000 worth of reimbursements from one of the federal programs or personal insurance, then you are eligible for $25,000 in expenses, and you can get up to $15,000. This grant program is $15,000. So if you get in line, because it's a first come, first serve, if you get in line and you have $15,000 in eligible expenses, then you'll get $15,000. One of the things I tell people that you ought to be doing right now is getting ready, getting your documents ready. This will be an online program. We do hope to have some fiscal locations around the state. I have a webinar tomorrow with two different ones tomorrow with legislators across the state. I hope to have them open their offices, so if people have some trouble technology wise, they'll have locations to go and upload their documents when necessary. But you know, one of the things you can do to prepare is get with the accounting, get with your bookkeeper, and start accumulating the documents that you need to prove your expenses. You will have to upload your receipts to show the expenses that you made, and these will all be reimbursable. The Louisiana Legislative Auditor is our backstop, meaning he will do all the auditing of the program. I mean, this is basically, as I tell people, the honor system. So you'll be asked a series of questions. There'll be yes or no. You'll have to give some details on your expenses and show those expenses. And as long as you can show them then you're gonna, you'll qualify for the grant. And then the auditor on the backside will come back and audit, your application. Every application, my understanding, we basically just started Wednesday with our consultant. Today, I'm actually getting my first full briefing from them, the company located in Baton Rouge. And, but that's about it. I mean, we expect to launch this by the 28th. You can go to latreasury.com and see what information we have on there. You can also give us your email and name and information, and then we will notify you prior to the program launch and the application process being launched. We're working pretty diligently. We are looking for ways for outreach, because this is a program for the entire state of Louisiana, not just for the urban areas, but this is a first come, first serve. It's the program started out at 300 million. It's down to 275 million now, with 40 million set aside for minority-owned businesses. So, Andre, that's about all I have, and I'm happy. I know I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I'll be happy to answer.
Yes, so I'll start going through the questions in the order they were received. The first one is from Roger. We have been looking at purchasing equipment to help assist with social distancing. Do we need to make the purchases first to get the grant, or submit our wish list to get funded?
Yeah, Roger, that's a good question, and we're having some debates right now, because when you involve all the lawyers, they all have different opinions. So I don't have that answer right now. Obviously, you can't be, in my opinion, listening to the lawyers, and we're working with someone in Congressman Scalise's office right now. Obviously, it's a reimbursement program, so you can't be reimbursed for something that you have not purchased. So I would tell you, if you go purchase that before the program launches, that's a reimbursable expense. But again, this is a reimbursed program. It's and it will come to you by way of a grant. So you have to prove that you had the expense, which means you have to have a receipt. There has been a little debate on economic loss, which I really don't want to get into because I know I don't want to put something out there that's not going to happen. But we're as I watch other states and how they're getting money out, I sort of want to file a suit when it comes to economic loss. But as far as a reimbursement goes, you can't get a reimbursement unless you've spent it. So hopefully that answers your question. If there was a decision made today, I would tell you that would not qualify because you did not make the purchase.
The second question is from Josh. If an individual has a criminal record, will they qualify for this grant? The law does not explicitly bar them from approval, from what I see.
Yeah, there's nothing in the law that disqualifies anybody for any personal type behavior.
Next question is, does having received a PPP loan eliminate your ability to receive this grant?
Okay, that was an example that I gave earlier. So if you had, and I'm not really that familiar with PPP loans and all those were grants, I believe. You qualify for up to $15,000 in this grant program, in a Main Street program. Any amount of money that you received over $15,000 will qualify. Example, if you had $50,000 worth of expenses and you received $25,000 from the PPP program, $25,000 will qualify. You cannot double dip. You cannot claim the same expenses that you claimed in the PPP or SBA program at all. So you can claim everything above and beyond what you've already claimed.
Could you touch, yeah, and could you touch on the first 21 days, or the first 21 days kind of limited to those businesses that didn't receive other federal funding?
Yeah, so the legislature was pretty clear when they pursued this, that they wanted to help businesses that hadn't been helped yet. So the first 21 days of the program, only businesses that have received no funding from the feds or personal insurance will be eligible in the first 21 days. And as I said earlier, the statistics show that there's a lot of small businesses in Louisiana that did not receive any aid. The real question is, how do we take a deep dive into small business, because most of them aren't members of chambers or any groups. They're just going to work every day. So that's going to be a challenge. Outreach across the state is going to be a big challenge.
The next question is also a time frame question. Is there a time frame for the expenditures, from when to when?
Yes, and so obviously you couldn't have the expenditure back in February. It would have to be in the timeline of the pandemic. And as long as it's within that timeline, you're fine. Now, there are some qualifications that we spoke of earlier. You, as a business, you had to have filed your taxes in 2018 or 2019, or will be filing in 2020.
Next question, also a timeline question. If a Louisiana resident was in the process of opening a new business in Louisiana in March, and the business officially opened March 5th, would they not be eligible because of the March 1st domicile rule?
Well, I believe the law, and I don't have it with me today. I was telling Andre I didn't go to the Capitol today. I stayed and worked out of my home, which is a little challenging when you sort of live in a country. That's a good question. Andre, and I don't know if any of my staff is on the call right now, but I'm pretty sure it's March 1st.
And I believe that's what the law says too, but if any of the treasurer's office staff is on and want to chat us the answer, we can certainly make sure to communicate that out.
And look, just if I don't get your answer today or right now, please call my office and I have staff. We're answering our own phones, and that's been a big question too. Who's going to answer your calls? Well, it's either going to be somebody from the Department of Treasury or somebody from Postal 8 who will who you calls go to their office right there in Baton Rouge, and accountants and CPAs will answer your calls.
Question about expenses from Katie. We had to install a patio in the parking lot for the restaurant to create social distancing outside of the restaurant. Would that count as an eligible expense?
Yes. How you like that answer?
Easy. Next question is from Mike. Is this part of a federal program or is it strictly using state funds?
No, this is part of the Federal CARES Act program. So the Fed sent $1.8 billion to the state of Louisiana. The legislature has called $300 million of that money set aside for this program.
Is there a deadline for purchases, and will expenses currently being incurred still count?
Yes, there will be a deadline because obviously when the program kicks off on the 28th, you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to use any purchases after that, obviously. So it'll be anything up until the day you apply, from when I think it starts on March 15th. I don't recall off the top of my head, or March 1st. But as we said early in the question, it has to be an expense that you actually incur. Now, I will throw this out there, and I don't mind talking out loud. We don't have some curb on all the ideas, and we're still flushing through some of the issues with the internal lawyers. So there's been questions like for rent. People have there's a lot of business owners who owe rent, past rent. And we've been asked, would that qualify? And everybody always says at the end of the day, Treasurer, it's your discretion. I would tell you, if somebody shows a lease that they owe April and May in rent, we're going to have to give that some serious thought. So it's not black and white. There are some areas that are going to take some interpretation when it comes to an expense that you incurred. If you owe the money, so you're incurred it, you haven't paid it yet. So that would be the only situation. You can't do that with equipment, obviously, but you can do that with the rents and your mortgage.
And in terms of, so we have a clarifying question from Janet to clarify sort of what due to COVID-19 means. So payroll, rent, utilities, how do you make sure that, or how do you specify that those were incurred? Like if your income plummeted due to COVID-19, would that make those expenses eligible? And how do you show that?
Okay, I'm looking at that's Janet's from Gonzalez.
Janet Gonzalez, yes.
So I don't understand the statement, I had to incur expenses due to COVID. So if you have a business, I don't mean to make it sound elementary. You had a business and you're operating during COVID. Any expenses you incurred during that time when you had a loss of income would qualify for reimbursement, which you have on your list: your payroll, your rent, your utilities, your unemployment, or anything that's all will be eligible expenses. But if your income is more than what you normally would have, then obviously you're not going to be eligible. But if your income plummeted, those will all be eligible. Now, some businesses just closed, so they didn't pay unemployment, or they didn't have payroll, but they still had rent, they still had utilities. Those are eligible expenses. Hopefully that clarifies for you. And again, you're happy to call my office at 225-342-0010, where we can answer any questions as well.
We have a lot of questions coming through about nonprofit eligibility. Are 501c3s, 501c6s eligible to apply?
No, nonprofits are not eligible. You have to be a licensed business in Louisiana. I do understand churches can be, but nonprofits cannot be.
And then the turnaround time, Marisha asked about the turnaround time between when a grant application is submitted and when the business would receive approval for the funds, and when they would actually receive the funds in hand.
Right. So if you have all your documentation in place and your application is complete and gets approved, you'll get a check within 10 days. What I suggest, again, we talked about this early, make sure you have all your documentation now. Download it into your computer so you don't have to go looking for it. I mean, today is I don't even know what day of month it is. Let's see, July 7th. So, I mean, you got 20 days to get your business straight, your accounting straight, whatever documents you believe are eligible, scan them, put them in your computer. So the day you go to do the application, you have those documents ready and you can finish your application, and you don't have to come back and forth and go find this or go find that. What I tell people, and we're still finishing the application, there's no sin in asking. The worst thing they could tell you is no. So if you think it would be eligible, load it in, provide the documentation, and let them tell you no. But don't. I'd rather be. I don't want to say wrong. I'd rather load them up, have them tell me no, than wonder after, well, was this eligible? Was that eligible? Put it all in. Let's just see.
Jessica asks, if a business received a Paycheck Protection Program loan for more than $15,000, but it did not cover all of the costs to be reimbursed, for example, equipment that the PPP did not cover, could the business still apply to be reimbursed for those expenses?
Yeah, so let's say your expenses were $30,000, then you receive $15,000 in PPP. The next $15,000 is eligible, and if you get in line quick enough, you will get $15,000 reimbursement.
Sam asks about business interruption, and does this include salary costs not covered by other CARES Act funds?
Business interruption, so you'd have to explain. I mean, if some people have business interruption insurance, so if you receive that, that would not be eligible. But if you receive no insurance to cover your business interruption, then that would be an expense that would be covered. And let me just say, Andre, just about any expense you have, and I said expense, inventory loss. Let's say you have a small store and your inventory all spoiled because you couldn't get rid of it. That's a qualified expense. Just about any legitimate expense is covered. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm sure there is some, but I just can't think off the top of my head what that wouldn't be. Before I forget, I want to make sure we understand this too. So it's your business to be eligible has to be less than 50 people. We get a lot of questions about sole proprietors, single, owners who have no employees. They are their only employee. You are eligible.
I think this is going to be another easy question for you, but if a business needed to rent more space to be able to socially distance, is that a qualified expense?
Yes.
And then the next question is, can we utilize the funds to repay a line of credit used to cover expenses prior to receiving grant funds?
I don't see why that wouldn't qualify. Let me read this again. Can we utilize the funds to repay a line of credit used to cover these expenses? Yes, as long as you can prove the timeline, I don't see why that wouldn't be covered.
Sean says that they have a lawn and landscape business. They lost income from other businesses that were closed due to COVID. We have little expenses due to the pandemic, though. Would we be eligible?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. And look, I'm working hard to try to figure out how do we help people like you, Sean? How do we help landlords? I'm in the real estate business. I have a lot of real estate agents who are in a predicament. I tell people, the real estate world always seems to take it in the shorts. We did in 2008 when all the bailouts came, but the residential world and the real estate world didn't have any relief. But we're trying to figure out a way that we can help people who don't necessarily. What's the definition of your brick and mortar? Now when I say, the way I interpret brick and mortar is there a location? Your business and your place of business is somebody's yard. So I would tell you to call my office at some point, and or if you could send me an email and go to latreasury.com, send an email with this example, because I haven't seen one like this, but we've seen some other related questions, because we need to be able to figure this out. Because you could, I would tell you, if the decision was made today, you probably wouldn't be. But I'm hoping through some conversations with the U.S. Treasury that we get a little bit more guidance, because it doesn't. This program does not allow for economic or revenue loss. It's a reimbursement program, so that's a problem. And if they stick to that definition, I would probably I'd be guessing and say you wouldn't be eligible. Don't take that as the rule yet. We're still trying to work through some legalities and interpretation from the different from between Washington and Louisiana. But please send me an email with your name and all, so we can. That's a very good example that we can use.
And we'll send around to all the participants the contact information that they can use to get in touch with your office. Also, I've seen some questions about the slide deck and video, whether it's going to be available. So we'll share all of that information with all the participants by email, probably later this afternoon. And it'll also be posted on One Acadiana's website. The next question is from Allison. She asks about the qualification of rent and utility expenses. So for a brick and mortar, would that be for the length of time that it was closed, or could it be beyond that?
No, I interpret that during the pandemic. I mean, we're still in the pandemic, so I would interpret that as up until the day the program's launched. Any expenses you've incurred up until the date that you apply are eligible.
And so Sheila asked about the July 28th date for those applying in the first 21 days. They're the businesses that have not received CARES Act funding. And so do the rest of the businesses have more time to accumulate expenses that they can apply for?
Yeah, but this is what I've told people. I would apply on day one. If you have already received some aid from the feds, don't wait 21 days. I would go ahead and make application now. But to answer your question, if you want to wait 21 days, yes, those expenses would be eligible. But I'm not so sure that after 21 days or after 31 days, there's going to be much money left. I guess nobody really knows. We don't know if it's going to blow up. When Mississippi did it, I think they had 15,000 claims in their first day. So we expect to see a lot of claims in the first 2 days, and you can do your math, do the math. It really comes down to whether or not do we believe people will be eligible for the full 15,000 or some partial amount. So we're going to give away up to 15,000 up until we run out. So I wouldn't wait. I would go ahead and apply, and your application will just be set aside until we get past the first 21 days.
And a clarifying question too, is it expenses? So if you're applying for reimbursement from expenses, are those expenses incurred before the launch of the program or before the business makes their application?
What's the name of that one, Andre?
Rebecca.
So yes, it is expenses incurred before the launch. I'm assuming you're talking about the launch of this program. Yes, these have to be expenses that you've incurred. We talked about the only scenario that we have discussed internally is rent, and whether or not you have incurred the expense, but you may not have paid your rent yet, or you haven't been able to catch up with your rent. I mean, I'm a landlord. I have tenants, a lot of tenants who have not caught up on their rent. I don't know if they'll ever catch up on their rent, to be quite frank about it. So, but we do believe that incurred expense on rent will be eligible.
And if a business waits, let's say, a few days to apply and they incur an expense on August 1st, but they don't apply to August 2nd, could they get reimbursed for that August 1st expense?
Yeah, so it seems like there's a lot of questions about that. From the time that you apply for this grant, all expenses prior to that date are eligible. You just have to you have to have a receipt. So as long as you have the receipt and you download it, it's eligible.
Timmy asks, so Timmy sells honey, and he's wondering if there will be help available for income lost from the closing of farmers markets and sales in stores from businesses like his. And that came through on the chat, not the Q&A.
Okay. That's a good question, Tim. I don't know the answer to that. Please send me an email. But we can you sort of can walk through this common sense wise. I mean, that's what I have to do. And all we can do is take the law, read it, and I keep telling my staff, don't expound on it. We have to stick to the law, because then this becomes tough. You know, it says you have to have a brick and mortar location where customers come to see you. We'll just have to walk through that scenario with the legal bees and see. Legal bees, get it?
So Perry says that their PPP funds expired 2 weeks ago, and they're ineligible to open until phase 3. Are there exceptions to businesses that are still not open to receive grants earlier than the 21-day waiting time frame for previous funds received?
No, the first 21 days is set aside for people like you. That is the deal. So you'll be eligible, and you know, in the first 21 days, you and any other businesses like you, that's what the 21 days is set aside for.
Cindy asks about a nonprofit that is registered as a corporation with the state. would that nonprofit be eligible if they're a corporation registered with the state?
Yeah, my questions and answers say that no nonprofits are eligible. Now, if you have a particular, if you want to email us, I can get further clarification, but my fact sheet says no. And they don't expound on it. They just said nonprofits eligible. The answer is no.
David asks about businesses that are based out of a home, and will mortgage payments, utilities, phone bills, expenses like that be covered?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, so it would be the same expenses that are eligible for you on your taxes now. So for instance, for those that run, I haven't done this in a long time, but when I was younger, we ran our business, and there's a certain percentage, right, that you can claim. You can only claim that percentage. You can't claim more, right? So whatever you can legally claim as an expense now will be an eligible expense. Now, that is your brick and mortar. That's your place of business. The real question is, do your customers or employees come to your home, come to your office? If the answer to that is yes, then you're eligible. If the answer to that question is no, then you're not eligible.
Okay, so similar scenario from Allison, who runs a very small business with no employees. So she runs it with just one partner. Yep. And they aren't on payroll, but pay themselves through an owner's draw, which is their income. They haven't been able to pay themselves, but would a payment before they apply be eligible for reimbursement?
So you talking about Andre, I'm assuming she's talking about the payment that they pay to themselves.
Yes.
As their paycheck. That's a good one. I would have to say that would be, but again, send me an email, please, and well, look, and I'm happy to give y'all my cell phone number. I take calls all day long. My phone rings. When I finish this webinar, I'll have to answer them all, and I'll keep on going. But my personal cell phone is 985-373-4873. I'm happy to take your information and pass it on to my consultants so they can answer your question. I would say probably the easiest thing to do, though, is to send us an email so that we can send it on and get a good answer for you.
And what's the best email address to use to email questions in? Is it latreasury.com? Would it?
Yeah, just go to the website at www.latreasury.com and send an email through it.
And we'll send that information out, like I said, to everyone afterwards.
Yeah.
So Jessica has a follow-up on the lawn care example. If someone runs an electrical business but has had to purchase contactless payment equipment, laptops, etc., but they run the business from their home, would they qualify?
Excuse me. So look, let's be real clear on this. Jessica, the answer to your question is yes. This grant is geared towards small business and people like you. Bricks and mortar can be home-based businesses. They just have to be eligible, though, your home-based business, you have to see customers. So as I said a few minutes ago, if you have customers come to your home, to your business office, you qualify. If you don't have customers come to your office at your home, then you don't qualify. So the answer to that question would be, when asked, do customers come to your home business? The answer to that is yes.
So we had a few questions similar to that, and we also have a few questions once again about rent and utilities and what's eligible to get reimbursed in terms of rent and utilities. So Shantae asks if your business had to close its doors to qualify for the rent and utility assistance.
No, you didn't have to close. You just had to have either business interruption or less business than what you had, and you qualify. Now, obviously, if your business is closed and still closed, then absolutely you qualify. But you just have to have business interruption, and there's not too many businesses that weren't interrupted. Gas stations, grocery stores, outside of that, just about everything else was closed. And even though restaurants didn't close 100%, what they were open 25%, so that's business interruption.
So another question from a business owner who pays himself or herself. If they pay themselves any money prior to applying for the grant, would this be eligible for reimbursement through the grant?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, I was reading Kathy's question.
So if a business owner pays himself or herself and they pay themselves before they apply for the grant, would that be an eligible expense for them to get reimbursed for?
All right, so this is a similar question to the one asked earlier about, a business owner paying him or herself, correct?
Correct.
Send me an email, but I gotta believe that's an eligible expense, because I don't see the difference between an employee or you paying yourself as an employee. That's how I interpret that. And that's not the gospel, and we're still putting these things together, but that would be a good email to send us so I can make sure our team is prepared for that. Because what's going to happen once we launch, they'll have a call center, and the call center people, they will need to know all these answers, and there'll be a team of accountants from the company who will be experts that will answer these questions. So believe me when I tell you, all these questions will get answered. But Tom, either at the time of application or you'll know before.
And we're one of the first webinars on the program, so
yes,
I think you're still flushing out the frequently asked questions.
We are, and look, I want y'all to know that. That's Andre. I'm glad you made that comment. This sort of, I get a phone call one day from a state senator and says, "Hey, Treasurer, would you be willing to run this program for Treasury?" I didn't even hesitate. I just said yes. My wife hates me because I say yes to everything. I don't know how to say no. So we basically went we said yes. The legislation passes the day after session. We went to work on it. We hired the consultants on July 1. And as you know, today's just July 7th. So I'm getting my first full briefing from the consultants today at 4 o'clock. So tomorrow, I'm going to know a lot more than I know today. And on Friday, I'm going to be a genius when it comes to this stuff. But we're sort of walking through, and we hesitated not doing these webinars because we don't have all the answers yet. So don't take that like, man, the treasurer don't have a clue what's going on. The treasurer is learning every day on how we're going to run this program. And I don't need to tell you all this. The law isn't clear. The law is clear as mud on the CARES Act CARES Act law out of DC. So there's some room for interpretation, and that's what we're going through right now to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because once these claims start coming in, there can't be any room for interpretation. We need to know answers.
And we're happy to be your focus group to work through some of these things. Do have another frequently asked question to get clarification on a business that's run through someone's home. They do not have customers who come to their house, but they have employees who come to their house. Would they qualify?
Yeah, Kathy, I see that. I've been thinking about that as I was answering other questions. So you have employees come to your house, but you don't have any customers that come to your house. I think the law says, and again, I don't have it here with me today, that you have to have either customers and or employees frequent your business. So my question off the top of my head would be, you wouldn't qualify. But that's a but. Send me an email and I'll get clarification. The difference, not the difference. We know the difference between employees and customers. I don't remember if it says and or both.
And Cindy chatted that there's an issue with the email on the website, so we'll troubleshoot that, and we'll make sure when we send out the follow-up materials later today that everyone has the appropriate contact information. So we have one question that just came in from Andrea. Did the state explore hiring a disadvantaged business capable of managing the program? So in terms of, yeah.
So anybody could apply for the contract. We probably had about 12 applicants. Some were just for media, some were for technology, and then some would run the program. It's a big lift, and I've talked to small companies, small minority companies. It's a big lift for a company to take on a project like this. So yes, it was posted on our website. The procurement laws for right now in Louisiana suspended due to the pandemic. So I elected as treasurer to put it out. I did not have to advertise. I could have hired whoever I wanted, to be perfectly frank about it. But I had so many people calling for business that I thought the fair thing to do was to put it out for bid. And we did. We had about 12 different companies apply, and then I had to make the tough selection of picking one. And quite frankly, it wasn't tough. It was actually was pretty easy to pick who was the most qualified, who was based in Louisiana. This company's based right out of Baton Rouge, has over 400 employees. So that was also an emphasis on our part and the legislature's part to make sure that we spent as much of this money as possible locally in the state of Louisiana. But I wound up hiring 3 consultants. Postal Weight and others out of Baton Rouge, they got about 400 Louisianian employees. I hired a marketing company, a minority marketing company out of New Orleans who specializes in digital media. And that's not something that you find a lot of people who do a lot of. We're basically looking for about 20,000 to 28,000 applicants or claims to pay out. I don't want to spend $2 million in advertising the 4.6, 4.7 million people across Louisiana just to find 25,000 businesses that are eligible. I think that's a waste of money. The law allowed for me to spend up to $15 million, and I'm very happy to say that our contracts have all come in under 9. And because the more money I save, the more money that I will have to give the businesses. So we're doing everything we can to run the program properly and give it the juice that it needs. But I'm not spending money just to spend money. I have a lot of consultants calling who want a contract. This isn't a program for the consultants. This is a program for businesses. But we are paying attention. Obviously, we have a $40 million set aside for minorities, and we're going to need some help reaching those minorities. So if you have any ideas, I'm all ears.
Well, and that's actually a good transition to our next question, which will be our last question. from Jonathan Shirley, who I believe works for the Lead Center at UL Lafayette, which works with businesses. Obviously, One Acadiana works with businesses. We have chamber leaders, other economic development offices on the webinar today with us. What is the best or easiest way to let the businesses we work with know about the program?
Well, I guess once we start putting out some advertising, we should look. This is the first time I've even seen this. What do you call it, Andre? This program, the slides. This is my first one like this. So as we develop, I mean, our logo was made yesterday at 5 o'clock. So I don't know how Andre even got it like this quick. So I would think by the end of this week, we should have some, some very defined pieces of advertising, marketing pages or whatever you want to call it, that will start going out. And I'm working with some outreach groups that Andre's part of to reach business, because that's the name of the game here. So if you have any suggestions, but I mean, I think this is we can do this one of two ways. I can spend a ton of money trying to advertise, or I can reach out to the economic development groups, the chambers, the different veteran groups and women groups, minority groups, Hispanic chamber, Black Chamber of Commerce groups, and get them to sort of hit their members. And rather than going to spend money trying to find them, I'm hoping we can network through all these different organizations to get down to the business level. I guess my biggest fear is a lot of the business we're looking at, if you think back to when you first got in business, when I was in my late 20s, when I opened my first business, I didn't have time for the chamber. I couldn't afford the dues. I didn't have the time to go. I wasn't a member of anything. I just went to work every day. Those are the type of businesses that we need to reach down to and help, because even if you have a bigger business, our bigger businesses can't be successful without all those mom and pop businesses being successful. So everybody on this line, if not you, you know 1, 2, or 10 or a dozen businesses that could use this grant. And it's really going to come down to a big network and operation, in my opinion.
So we're right at time. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, and then could you repeat the application start date one more time? We had one last question come in.
So the application start date is by July 28th. We hope to get it out a little earlier, but right now that is the date, July 28th. Again, if you have any questions, just email us. Go to our website at www.latreasury.com. I'm going to give Andre my personal email. I use my personal email so much, I don't even know what my state email is, to be honest with you, which is probably not a very good thing. But I'm getting a lot of emails right now. But I'll give all that to Andre. I'll give him my cell phone number, my office phone number, where my personal assistant answers every day, every call herself, is 225-342-0016. If you want to call me on my cell phone, just know that I typically don't answer my cell phone during daylight hours because I just don't have the time. It's 985-373-4873. But that's about it, Andre. I appreciate the time, and this will I do this for Baton Rouge later this afternoon, so this was good practice.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being with us. Thank you for your availability. And thank you everyone for joining us. We're going to share the slide deck, the video recording, the contact information later today. And we look forward to offering more Acadiana Business Resource webinars going forward. Thank you once again, and please stay safe. This concludes.
Thank you, Andre.